I live on the island of Kauai and would love to have a nice little catamaran that I can drop into our calm rivers and be able to enjoy our beautiful afternoons. There are no mini cats or patio boats available for sale on Kauai, so I decided I needed to make one. After searching the internet and YouTube for build-it-yourself solar boats, I came across Jamie Mansell of YouTube fame. He's built a number of solar boats that are made out of fiberglass for durability and also for efficiency due to the low power of the electric motors that are being used and powered by the solar panels and some batteries. Didn't know how to fiberglass, but I had seen some videos on YouTube of people who had lashed together a couple of kayaks with a platform to create a little Kadim Rack. These were portable and stable enough that some people put outboards on them and took them out to the oil platforms in the Gulf of Mexico for fishing. So of course I wanted to add a little solar roof and a trolling motor to create a little portable solar Kadim Rack. So off to Home Depot we went to get some materials. We got all plastic PVC pipes and a PVC panel. I wanted nothing that could rot or corrode. Back at the house we put it all together and glued it up. I ordered a couple of those inexpensive flexible solar panels on Amazon along with a little trolling motor and hooked them up to do a test. It works! And here it is, all put together out in the backyard. It's all glued together and strapped down to the kayaks. We've painted the plastic, and you can see the panels are all bungee corded to the roof here. Trying to keep it as lightweight as possible, as there is about a 450-pound weight limit with the two kayaks that we have. These are not the ideal ones, as you would like to have longer and thinner ones that have a higher carrying capacity. But as you can see, even on this overcast conditions, the trolling motor is spinning away with all four of these panels plugged into it. Ratchet straps is what holds it all together, and you actually have a pretty stable platform. The transom is made with extra PVC pipe and a couple pieces of this PVC board clamped together and all glued up. It proves to be plenty strong. Now it's back to the river. Setup time is about 20 minutes to take everything off the truck and put it all together. Out on the river for a quick test, she proves to be secure and stable. The kayak platform combo is pretty stable, the roof not so much. She cruises okay, but could definitely be a little bit faster. In the end, we got rid of the roof solar panels and just charged the battery before we go out, but it sure is convenient for going up our local rivers. These two shorter, fatter kayaks are great for first-time users, but they're not that efficient. Ideally, you'd want to use something like a Cabo 2 that's longer and skinnier and has a much higher carrying capacity. The little red and blue kayaks have a combined carrying capacity of about 450 pounds, while two of these would have a carrying capacity of about 1,200 pounds. With 4x8 decking panels, you could easily create a 16-foot long by 8-foot wide Kadim Rack out of two kayaks. At this point I was ready to build something a little more permanent and had been watching lots of videos online about fiberglassing, including many by YouTube famous Jamie Mansell and his fantastic solar boats made out of fiberglass. After making drawings on the computer, I decided to make a cardboard model to scale. 1 inch equals 1 foot, and basically built with pontoons and the deck and the roof exactly how I'm going to do out of fiberglass. The current layout for the idea involves 2 transoms in the rear, each one of those supporting an electric trolling motor. Then you've got 2 chairs with a prep table in between, and then you've got 2 bench rows of 4 seats each that face each other with the steering console in the middle. Up front you have the boarding area and deck for swimming, fishing, etc. Each of the pontoons will be filled with waterproof bulkheads, tapering radically in the front to help it move through the water with less horsepower due to the electric solar-powered motors. I had never done any fiberglassing before, so after watching lots of videos, I went to my local hardware store and bought enough material that I could do some experimentation. Here I've got some chopped strand material, and I'm laying up a couple of layers. Here you can see some thick woven and some thicker chopped strand. All of this is part of doing the different tests to see the strength of layering up different types of materials and how it is to work with the resin, etc. When working with a new type of material, I think it's really important to play with it for a little while so that you get a hang of it and an instinctual feel for the material before you start building important part. After watching lots of YouTube videos and experimenting with different types of fiberglass cloth, I agree that the 1708 material is ideal for boat building. It is a 2-layer material with chopped strand on one side and woven on the other, and it helps to build up layers quickly while providing wonderful strength in all directions. Here we are doing some systematic testing to figure out just how many layers it takes to get the strength we're going to need for the various parts of the boat. While waiting for our fiberglass order to come in, I decided to make a few models of the pontoons out of fiberglass and also out of cardboard, each one of these built to scale of 1 inch equals 1 foot, and also using the same building techniques for the pontoons that I'm going to be using for the real thing. Each time I build one of these models, I get a better hang of what it's going to be like to do the big job. Our order's in. We have a roll of chopped strand and a roll of 1708. Boy, they sure are heavy, but that along with a couple cans of resin and we are ready to get started. Our first step is to create a mold for half of a pontoon. Here we are waxing up a piece of plywood that we've cut for the exact shape of half of one of the molds. After waxing the plywood, the next process is to wet down the surface in preparation for laying down our first piece of fiberglass cloth. Now that both of the panels are done, it's time to build a support for the fiberglass cloth and get ready for the next step. We've got the mold up on some wood supports, and I'm using some PVC pipe with little notches cut into it as spreaders to make sure that the mold is in the right shape that we want it to be. As you can see, I've got some binder clips to help hold the ends shut. As we put the fiberglass in, we'll close it at the very end, and that way we can get a super sharp and pointy front. And now we're halfway through the layup process. You can see that there's already been a couple layers of 1708 with the black dye that have been put in. Here's some more that are cut and ready to go. There's our tray. And then we've got another piece that has been laid in and just sort of smoothed out, and it's ready to be rolled on with some resin. The first half of one of the pontoons is done, and it's ready to come out of the mold. At this point, it's just a couple layers of 1708. As we spread the pontoon apart and put the bulkheads in, many more layers will be added for stiffening. For getting it out of the mold, I made this tool out of a PVC pipe. Using a heat gun, I was able to melt the ends and then compress them together. And the idea is to go ahead and put this in between the mold and the piece that's coming out, and then separate them. Now the piece is out, they're a little bit rough, it's going to need some work, and here we are doing that work. The belt sander definitely helps to make short work of the big bumps, and here you can see that we've smoothed it out and revealed that nice sharp edge that we're going to have for each one of these pontoons. A little bit more work and it's starting to look like a boaty thing. In preparation for the next phase, we need to fix our mold, and so we get it back up on the table and do a little work on it. Now we've got the first half of the pontoon and the mold put together, ready to go ahead and fill it in and create one single pontoon. As we fill in the mold for the second half of the pontoon, we overlap it to the first pontoon, creating one singular contiguous piece. After curing overnight, it was just a couple of quick passes with the demolding tool and out you came. Up on the sawhorses, and it's time to do a little bit of sanding and filling and get this boaty thing going. There's a number of little low areas and transitions that got attention with some extra fiberglass. Flipped over and in some stands, it's really starting to look like a boat now, and this gives us an opportunity to go around and start sanding the sides as well as the edges. Someday we're going to enjoy watching the front of this pontoon just cut through the water. It's time to get started with the bulkheads. These will create waterproof compartments as well as help to spread the pontoons and provide stability and support. To make the bulkhead, we first wax a bit of the table, cut the shapes, and then go ahead and laminate them together. Then we sand and rough fit them into the pontoon, and then use little strips of fiberglass to tab it all together. This process creates waterproof compartments that we'll later be able to fill with foam so that no matter what happens, even if one of these pontoons gets a hole in it, it really will not be able to sink. As each bulkhead goes in, the compartment is filled with more layers of 1708 that overlap and create an incredibly strong keel. With all the bulkheads going in, it's starting to look more and more like a boat all the time. Each one of these bulkheads is watertight, and this little sacrificial bulkhead up in front is in case we happen to hit anything with the boat. We don't want the pontoon to fill with water.
Shut up and sit down.
For an added layer of safety, I decided to fill every one of these waterproof bulkhead compartments with foam and bottles. This way, if the pontoon gets punctured, each one of these compartments is isolated and can only fill so much because of all the foam and bottles that are displacing it. This means that if we get a hole in one of the pontoons, The boat will only be able to take on a little bit of water, as about 85% of the compartment will be filled with bottles and foam. With just one of those compartments partially flooded, we'll pretty much be able to go about our ways and fix it when we get home later. I was finally able to get my hands on some of the 2-part marine expanding foam. This is the 2-pound variety, and with all the bottles that I was able to collect, it was still going to cost me almost $100 to fill each one of these compartments. I really like the expanding foam material, but that's a lot of money. After each bulkhead compartment gets foamed, I create a lid and fiberglass it in to create a waterproof compartment. Then you simply repeat this process for each bulkhead. Because polyester fiberglass resin eats away at the foam, we create a custom lid for each one of these compartments and then fiberglass it over with the strips, as you see that we've done here for the first one. This process works great as it keeps the resin away from the foam, allowing us to create the cap on it. In order to save money, I decide to skip bottles and look for styrofoam. It's a closed cell foam like the AB foam, so in case water floods in, it's not going to be saturated. It's plenty strong for these purposes and is quite a bit lighter weight than the AB marine foam. Did I mention that discarded styrofoam is free and helps to save the planet by using it for something else? Once the foam dries, the foam in the styrofoam is set up amazingly strong and will absolutely help to dampen these voids, so that when you jump up and down on the pontoons, it's not like a drum. I use a little handsaw to trim off all of the excess foam material and make it flush with the top of the pontoons. This project is a great father and son activity. Piece after piece, we create the lids and glass them in, helping to secure a nice watertight pontoon filled with foam, almost unsinkable. Section by section, you keep going until it's finished. We like this process so much that we built another pontoon and filled it with styrofoam just the same. Now with 2 finished pontoons, it's about to get exciting. With both pontoons finished, it was time to take a little break and enjoy one of our neighboring streams. This is Kalia River on Kauai's east side. We decided to take our Kadim Rack out. Here you can see it's all disassembled and stored on top of the truck. No trailer needed. The black pipe on the left of the construction rack is a solar shower. The platform is on and strapped down, the trolling motor's clamped down, and the battery's hooked up. We're ready to go. With the full charge on the battery, she cruises pretty good. Being that it's a silent electric motor, you can really enjoy nature without the sound of a gas engine. The trolling motor's got 5 speeds, but we don't like to go too fast, so we usually cruise on speed number 2. Someday it could be fun to redo this design with 2 nice long kayaks. Now it's back to work on the boat. We built some new stands so that the pontoons can be side to side and level. Walking through here is one of the last times that we'll be able to do this, because we're about to join these two and they will forever be together. Your eyes aren't deceiving you, that was fiberglass used on the front of my bumper. I won't have to imagine them being connected for long because we're about to create the cross supports. I'm using a 4-inch PVC pipe cut in half lengthwise as the mold. 3 layers of 1708 make this cross support extremely strong. Off the mold they come, nice and easy, and there's our first part. With a bit of dry fitting, grinding, and sanding, we're able to get it in. A little bit of tape and some poles to help support it while I tab in the fiberglass. Once the tabbing's done, I'll pull out the tape and the supports, and then we'll put some more layers in to secure it in place. These cross supports are set just slightly lower than the level of the pontoon, as I'm going to be putting lids on them to enclose them and make them watertight and even stronger. Gorilla tape was handy for holding these cross supports in while the fiberglass cured. They'll come off later and get filled in with a fiberglass peanut butter material. We use the same process to create more cross supports, and ultimately the whole boat is connected as one unit. Don't worry, these cross supports are not going to be doing the heavy lifting of holding these pontoons together. As the deck panels go in, they will be fiberglassed to the pontoons as well as to the cross supports, fusing it all together to create one contiguous and super strong unit. You're really starting to get an idea now of how this boat's going to look. While waiting for our foam sheeting to arrive for the deck, I decided to use Photoshop to go ahead and visualize what it's going to look like when it's all covered over. Our deck panels are going to be made from a foam core construction. In this case, we're using the Divinicel. It's a 3/4 inch panel that is a closed cell foam. This is one of the preferred materials used in the boating industry for deck panels, for wall panels, furniture, and other items. When you sandwich the foam with fiberglass, it becomes incredibly strong, similar to how a surfboard is made. Each panel gets 3 layers of 1708 and a final layer of chopped strand. In this cross section, you can see the foam core sandwich that is so strong. The process is repeated until we have created 4 of these panels. Then we'll fuse them all together and attach them to the pontoons.